Welcome to our Spring 2022 M-STEP Administration Training for Building and District Assessment Coordinators Training Series. This chapter will review important information and tasks that need to be done before testing. I am going to begin this training session by introducing everything that's new for the M-STEP in 2022. We understand that people may have had different roles or responsibilities over the past couple of school years, so we have an In Case You Missed It section that covers the things that are relatively new over the past couple of years. Next, I will review the tasks that need to be done in the OEAA Secure site. Then, we will review the tasks that are done in the DRC Insight portal. Student supports and accommodations will be discussed. And then I will end by discussing what needs to be done to prepare staff and students for the M-STEP. We will start by going over things that are new for the 2022 administration. The first thing to discuss is the update to the testing windows. There are changes for both online and paper pencil testing. First, for online testing, there is just one 6-week test administration window for grade 3, math only, and all content areas for grades 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11. That window is April 11th to May 20th, 2022. Then there's a 4-week window, and that applies to grade 3 online ELA and all grades and content areas of paper pencil testing. That 4-week window also starts on April 11th, but ends on May 6th. Grade 3 online ELA has the 4-week window so that student scores are available to meet the requirements of the Read by Grade 3 legislation. All Grade 3 ELA scores must be complete in order for the preliminary scale score calculations and CEPI parent letters to be sent according to the legislatively required timeline. Paper pencil testing no longer has specific test dates and makeup dates. Students testing paper pencil can complete their test on any school day within the 4-week window. The next thing that's new this year is the test monitoring application. This is a new feature in the DRC Insight portal where test administrators can monitor student progress through the test during test administration. This is an optional feature, so when setting up your test sessions in the DRC Insight portal, you will see the 2 new menus that are highlighted here. There is the Test Monitoring menu and Restricted Access menu. Test Monitoring can be set to none, so there would be no code entry, optional, where a code may be entered but isn't required, or required, where a student would not be able to access the test until they inputted the correct code. Restricted Access field can be set to false or true. False means students proceed directly to the test once the monitoring code is entered. True can only be selected if the test monitoring selection is required, and this selection means that students will be placed in a waiting room after entering the test monitoring code until they are approved to enter the test. The way this looks for students is that on the welcome page of the test, where students verify their name and date of birth, there is a box to input the code if either optional or required are selected for the test session. The test administrator has to have access to the DRC Insight portal and get the code to start the test from the DRC Insight portal. We discuss the access requirements to the DRC Insight portal later in this presentation when we discuss the DRC Insight portal in more detail. This is what the test monitoring dashboard looks like during the administration. The test administrator can view student names, which assessment they are logged into, and they can view their navigation and progress through the test for fixed form tests. Science and Social Studies are fixed form tests, and some accommodated versions of the ELA and mathematics tests are also fixed form. For computer adaptive ELA and mathematics tests, the progress column displays NA. This is because the adaptive tests do not have the same quantity of items for all students, and items are delivered based on student prior responses. It cannot be determined ahead of time. There is a new multiplication table guidance document on the M-STEP webpage. You can follow this link or go to www.michigan.gov/mstep and go to the Supports and Accommodations section. As a reminder, the multiplication table accommodation is available for grades 4 through 7 only. Before requesting the multiplication table as an accommodation to use with the mathematics assessment, download and review the document. There are questions that the IEP team needs to answer that will guide decision-making before submitting the request for the multiplication table. There should be a preponderance of evidence prior to requesting this accommodation. OEAA monitors the use of accommodations and may flag tests for overuse or overassignment of this accommodation, so be sure to follow this process if you are deciding whether to use the multiplication table. Mathematics online tests now have a Spanish and Arabic glossary available as a designated support. It has to be assigned in the DRC Insight portal before printing test tickets, like all designated supports and accommodations. These are intended to be used for students learning English who have literacy in their first language plus intermediate to high English proficiency. Not every word on a test is translated, just selected words on each item are provided in the glossary. If you have any students testing with the Braille paper pencil test, this year there are some changes to the forms. This is important because students have to use the correct answer document with the Braille form of the test. We call the Braille form Form 88, so they both mean the same thing, Braille and Form 88. When you order a Braille kit, you will get the correct answer document along with the kit, so as long as you are using the answer document that came with the kit, you will be good. But for science, social studies, and grade 5 mathematics, there are 3 unique forms of answer documents. There's Form 1, which is the general form, Form 88, which is the Braille form, and Form 2, which is the emergency form. If any students use the enlarged print test booklet, that goes with the Form 1 answer document. For all grades ELA and mathematics except grade 5, there are 2 forms of the answer documents. Form 1 that goes with the general form or the enlarged print test booklet, and Form 2 and Form 88 are the same document. You use the Form 2 or 88 emergency and Braille answer document with the Braille and emergency test booklets. Again, as long as you are using the answer document that came in the Braille kit, this should be all sorted out for you. But you should be aware that you need to be careful about which answer document students use that go along with the test booklet. This next section is going to discuss things that have been added over the past couple of years, in case you missed anything during the pandemic school years. First, there are 3 ways you can get important dates: PDFs, an Excel spreadsheet that includes all assessment programs, or a Google Calendar link. These are all available for all statewide summative assessment programs. You can select which Google Calendars you want to add, and you can filter the Excel spreadsheet, or you can use the PDFs for the program you are working on. These are all available from the MSTEP webpage at www.michigan.gov/MSTEP. Select the button at the top of the page shown here by the red arrow. The test administrator's directions and manuals combine everything a test administrator needs to know from the test administration manual with the test directions that are used during the administration. They are unique by test mode, online or paper pencil, and by grade. The test administrator is required to read the test administrator's directions and manual for the grades, test mode, and content areas that they will administer before the test administration. Test administrators need a printed copy of the directions. They are sent to schools in the initial material order according to the school pre-ID counts. Schools can choose to use text-to-speech for directions only during administration. This decision should be made by the district or building assessment coordinator. It's important to note there are directions to follow that guide students through logging into the test, verifying that it is the correct test for the student, and then the TTS option begins. The directions for administering the test without TTS for directions is also included. So it's important that the test administrator know which option will be used for the administration, and they preview the document before administering the test. The online test administration directions and manual documents include directions to use with TTS for directions and without. It is important that test administrators review the directions before administering the test so they know which set of directions to follow. Assessment security training is required. District or building assessment coordinators are required to complete the Michigan Virtual Assessment Security modules and read the AIG, and test administrators can either complete the modules or read the AIG. Anyone who has previously completed the assessment security modules will receive a refresher course in Michigan Virtual in place of the full assessment security modules. More information is available on the MSTEP webpage at www.michigan.gov/MSTEP. Scroll to the Assessment Training and Resources for Educators section of the webpage and select the document Assessment Security Training Information. The science test is one part for all grades. Breaks are encouraged during the test session when students need a break according to local school or district policy. The test time estimate is 90 minutes. Social studies is also one part for all grades. There is a new stacked Spanish designated support for online social studies, and there are new item types on the test, context-based items. They include a context that orients students to a time period, historical event, or concept which is followed by 3 or 4 items related to that context. For incident reporting, a test irregularity should be reported to OEAA within 2 school days, either of the irregularity or from the date you were notified. This is to ensure a timely response and resolution to the incident. If there is an irregularity where a test is administered without a required designated support, then the school is required to submit a signed form from the parent that indicates the reason for the need to retest, and parent permission plus a signed form from the educator who is responsible for day-to-day instruction in the content area that affirms that the student uses the support as part of their daily instruction. If it is an accommodation that is not provided during administration, the school must also submit the signed form from the parent with the reason for the retest and permission, plus the appropriate page from the IEP or Section 504 plan that lists the required accommodation for the content area. Incident reports can be submitted prior to getting the required documentation. You do not have to wait to have everything before submitting the incident report. There are 3 specific testing irregularities that may occur that must be reported on the day the incident occurred by 11:59 p.m. Again, you do not have to have documentation completed before submitting the report, but the report of the irregularity has to be submitted by 11:59 p.m. that day in order for the test to be regenerated. The first of these instances is if a student becomes ill and goes home on test day. The test can be regenerated only if the report is submitted on the same day that it occurred, and documentation of parent permission and verification of the incident, in this case attendance, is provided. Again, documentation can be submitted later, but the report has to be filed the same day. Next, if a student spends fewer than 15 minutes total in a test. This means if a student spends 5 minutes one day and 7 minutes another day, the cumulative total time spent testing has to be fewer than 15 minutes. Again, this report has to be submitted on the day the test is submitted. Documentation of parent permission is required, but can be collected on a later date as long as the report was submitted on the day of the event. This doesn't require documentation of verification of the incident because OEAA can see the time spent testing in the DRC Insight portal. Finally, if a student does not take prescribed medication on the day they complete the test can be regenerated. Again, the report has to be filed on the day it occurs, and documentation can be provided subsequently. And again, parent permission is required. Verification of the incident can be a signed document from the parent indicating the student didn't receive meds, or from whoever is responsible for administering the medications. Any test can be regenerated once. This means that for any of these reasons, the test can be regenerated one time, But if the same or another irregularity occurs a second time, it cannot be regenerated again. The calculator policy as it relates to mathematics has not changed. No calculators are allowed for any students, even as an accommodation for mathematics in grades 3 through 5. In grades 6 and 7 on the paper-pencil test, calculators are allowed only on Part 2 of the test, and for the online test, the calculator is embedded and available on items where calculators are allowed. And no handheld calculators are allowed except as an accommodation and only on items that have the calculator available. But for science, calculators are allowed on all tested grades 5, 8, and 11. In grade 5, basic calculators are allowed, and grades 8 and 11 have scientific calculators. The calculator is available on all items and is embedded in the online test. I'm going to take a few minutes here to review student supports and accommodations. During testing, issues with supports and accommodations are a frequent testing irregularity that is reported through our incident reporting tool. An accurate identification of student-designated supports and accommodations before testing begins can help prevent a lot of these issues from occurring. So I'm going to walk through what they are, some suggestions for helping keep track of what supports each student needs, and then how to assign them in the DRC Insight portal. First, when we speak about universal tools, these are tools that are available to all students. An example of this would be the highlighter. It's available on each item on the online test for all students, and schools are allowed to provide highlighters for paper-pencil testers to students. Just make sure they're not using it on the answer document. So this is a tool for everyone, and students can use it if they find it helpful. Designated supports are available for students based on their specific need. These are decided by educators, and they should be supports that are used in day-to-day instruction. The most common example of a designated support is text-to-speech for items only. Again, this should be decided individually by student, never assigned to a whole class, grade, or content area, and it should be something that the student is using in day-to-day instruction. Finally, accommodations are available for students whose IEP or 504 plan documents the need for this accommodation. To help clarify about text-to-speech or TTS, there are two different types of TTS. TTS for items only, or just TTS, and TTS passage. TTS is a designated support. It reads only the items on the test and can be assigned based on the specific need of the student. TTS Passage is an accommodation that is available for grades 6 and 7 ELA only. TTS Passage reads the passages and the items. This can only be assigned if TTS or Read Aloud is listed in the student's IEP or 504 plan. This is not available as an accommodation at all for anyone for grades 3 through 5 ELA because it would change the construct, or what is being measured, of the test. TTS for directions only is not an accommodation or a designated support. This is a universal tool available to any students and should be decided by the district or building assessment coordinator. This slide reviews what is included for TTS and for TTS Passage. TTS is available in all content areas, and it will read questions and answer options. There are no reading passages on the mathematics, science, or social studies assessments. TTS Passage for grades 6 and 7 ELA will read the passages as well as the question and answer options. It's important that you take time before testing to create a process that you will use to review which tools students are using in the classroom as a first step in thinking about supports and accommodations on the test. Then, you should work with your team to determine if there is a match between what is used in the classroom and what is available on the M-Step. Do not review the list of available designated supports and accommodations and then try to fit them to the student or students. Start with what happens in the classroom, then find what matches in the supports and accommodations guidance. You can find the supports and accommodations guidance document on the M-Step webpage at www.michigan.gov/MStep under the Student Supports and Accommodations heading. There is some good information in there, including some template documents that will help you keep track of what you should and should not be assigning for students. Make sure you take a look at this document. Before testing, which means now, you should meet with staff who are involved in students' day-to-day instruction, including special education staff, to determine what students need during testing. Once you have this information, either using the template provided on the MSTEP webpage or in another format that you have, then you should assign all of the universal tools, designated supports, or accommodations in the DRC Insight portal. Once this is done, make sure that your test administrators are made aware of all supports and accommodations that students need in their test sessions. This is important because not every support or accommodation is necessarily delivered through the testing engine. And if there are any issues with anything, the students will be notifying their test administrator. Some schools use Google Sheets or other collaborative software to make sure that everyone's aware of what is needed. Again, you can use this process or another process, but the important thing is that all test administrators know every support and accommodation that each student should or should not have in each test session. This is an important role of the assessment coordinator. Then, once everyone knows everything they need to know, you'll need to make sure that they have access to all the materials to provide the supports and accommodations. This means things like headphones for TTS or calculators for grades 6 and 7 students who are not using a handheld calculator. You assign students universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations in the DRC Insight portal to ensure that students receive the appropriate supports during testing. You can see whether a support is a universal tool, abbreviated UT, designated support, abbreviated DS, or accommodation, abbreviated AC, in the DRC Insight portal on the screen where you assign them. Make sure that you are working with educators to assign these appropriately. Also, you must assign all designated supports and accommodations before you print any test tickets. If test tickets are printed before you have assigned designated supports and accommodations, they will not be available on the student's test. Next, we are going to discuss the tasks that need to be done before testing. This is the bulk of the tasks that need to be done by assessment coordinators, getting everything set up and ready for the test administration. We'll go through each of these tasks one by one. I will go over general information about each of these tasks, but in some cases I will refer you to the training resources that are available on the web pages or in other trainings. Before testing begins, you're going to need to create your building or district testing schedule. These are required to be maintained at the district for 3 years, and they must include the information included on this slide: district and building name, building assessment coordinator's name, the date, location, and starting and ending time of the test administration, the assessment grade and content, and finally test administrator and proctor names for each testing session. There's a template available in the Assessment Integrity Guide on the MSTEP webpage, and again, that's www.michigan.gov/MSTEP under the Current Assessment Administration section. You are not required to use the template. You can create your own, but you need to have this information on it. Test session time estimates have not changed for the MSTEP. You can see here the estimates for the time students spend testing. For your schedules, you need to add in time for test administrators to read directions, for students to log in, and for other administrative tasks. There are MDE recommendations for how to schedule in the MSTEP TAM. Also remember that MSTEP is not a timed test. Students need to be provided adequate time for them to complete testing. For ELA, student testing should take approximately 2 hours. Math, grades 3 through 5, is estimated for 1.5 hours and 2 hours in grades 6 and 7. And science is estimated in 5th grade for 1.5 hours. Finally, 60 minutes is the estimate for social studies. These are the grade 8 test time estimates. The MSTEP tests are estimated at 1.5 hours for science and 1 hour for social studies. You can also see the time estimate for PSAT 8-9 is 2 hours and 35 minutes. Remember that M-STEP is not a time test, so these are estimates, whereas PSAT is a time test, so make sure you follow the procedures in the PSAT test manuals when administering PSAT 8-9. Here we have MME test timings, and again, the M-STEP times are just estimates as it is an untimed test. This is not the case for other programs, so make sure you're following procedures for the College Board and ACT WorkKeys tests. But for M-STEP, the science estimate is an hour and a half, and social studies is 30 minutes. Next, I will review the tasks done in the OEAA Secure site. This is a site that you will use quite frequently throughout testing. It's an OEAA web application that is used for many testing tasks, and a lot of those tasks are done before testing, but there are a few that are during and after testing. In the OEAA Secure site, you will pre-identify your students for all state assessments. It's where you print barcode labels for paper pencil answer documents, in case you were not able to pre-ID before the deadline for shipping of barcode labels. As a note, if you did have any students pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing before the initial material order window, then you will get a blank sheet of labels that you can use to print your barcode labels from the Secure site. Which leads me to ordering paper pencil assessment materials. Your pre-ID list of students is what determines your initial material order, unless you go in to select additional items at that time. If something changes after the initial material order, for example, you have a student who needs paper pencil materials that you didn't previously plan on, or you have students enroll who need testing materials, then you can place an additional material order according to the dates in the Important Dates documents. And you place all of these orders in the OEAA Secure site. Prior to February 21st, you could group students into online sessions in the OEAA Secure site, and those were pulled into the DRC Insight portal. It's okay if you didn't get this done by February 21st. You can still group students into online test sessions within the DRC Insight portal that opened on March 4th. During testing, you report any testing irregularities for M-STEP in the OEAA Secure site, and after testing, you use the Secure site for the accountable students and test verification processes, and you access student test scores, data files, and reports through the OEAA Secure site. So you're going to need access to the OEAA Secure site throughout testing. If you don't already have access, this slide tells you how to fix that. You log into the OEAA Secure site using your MEAS login and password. That will bring up the Request Access page, which gives you directions on how to request access. If you need detailed instructions or additional help, then the Secure Site training page can help you. Go to www.michigan.gov/Secure Site Training and click right at the top of the page, How do I get access to Secure Site? The OEAA pre-ID'd students based on your fall MSDS General Collection Student Count Day on January 5th. There are no additional pulls for pre-ID that are done by MDE after that date, which means that any enrollment changes after this need to be inputted by you into the OEAA Secure site. Depending on the changes that you've had in enrollment and the accuracy of the MSDS General Collection data, for your school or district, you can pre-ID students one at a time using the student search method, or if you have a lot of students to add, you can follow the pre-ID file format and template to upload a lot of students. Or if you are confident in the accuracy of the data in MSDS, you can use the MSDS copy function on the Secure site. There are a ton of step-by-step instructions available for each of these methods of pre-ID on the Secure Site training page. Again, it's www.michigan.gov/Secure Site Training. And I will suggest you may want to either memorize that web address or add it to your bookmarks in your browser. Again, it's helpful for pre-ID and for login information, but it has help documents for anything you need to do in the Secure site. This is a screenshot of the student search page with obfuscated data on it. That first column lists the student's UIC, and then where the arrow is where the student name is. Then you can see birth date and gender. As a note, you can search by student information, which is what is selected here in the upper left, or by UIC or barcode. MDE does suggest that you use or at least verify the student's UIC number. There are a lot of students who have the same or similar name, and even birth date isn't always different among students in the whole state who have the same name. We do get a few incident reports each year where the wrong UIC student has been pre-ID'd for testing, and then they complete the test with the wrong UIC and it's showing as out of level because they took a test that is in a different grade level than the actual student, or the student who was actually expected to test according to MSDS is listed as not tested because the student took the test under the wrong UIC. These are difficult to resolve because it's a manual process to move student test data from one UIC to another, and it is not something that is often done. So be sure that you pre-ID the correct student with a correct UIC, and you can avoid all of that. So once you've found the student and you know that you have the correct UIC, then you can select Pre-ID Student. That is this screen that you see here. You'll need to make sure that you pre-ID to the correct test cycle, ISD, district, school, and grade. Also, you can see the required information is listed here in red. At the bottom of the screen, you can see other student information, such as if the student is identified as EL, former English learner, special education, homeschooled, migrant, economically disadvantaged, homeless, in foster care, or military connected. This is where you'll enter the test mode, which means paper, pencil, or online, and you can also assign your reporting codes or research codes here. Next, we will discuss pre-identification using the pre-ID file upload. On the login screen, you can download the pre-ID file upload template. This is important because you need to use this specific layout in order for your upload to work in the OEAA secure site, and you need to follow the codes and abbreviations that are listed in the template. I'll show you a part of the template on the next page. So this is just a section of the pre-ID file upload template. You can see that it shows you the field length, the data type to be inputted, and then the field name and the specific information about how to complete each row. You can see, for example, the SDS grade code must be inputted, and you input kindergarten as 00, not K, or just 0. You can also see the requirements for inputting the student last, first, and middle name, and the specific codes used to identify students' ethnicity. Again, this is a part of the pre-ID file upload template. If you are going to pre-ID using this method, make sure you follow the requirements listed here. So here's your pre-ID file upload document. It has the columns already listed. You just input the data according to the requirements listed in the template. Just as an idea, which at this point would have to be for next year, some schools will maintain this document from student count day in the fall up until it's time to pre-ID students, so that this information has been inputted as students enroll, and then it's all ready to go when you are ready to validate your pre-ID student list. This screen shows you the MSDS copy process for pre-identifying students. You can see in the box under Pre-ID Method the MSD copy option has been selected. It's important that you use the information as submitted in MSDS in order for this to work, and in order to make sure that you have accurate reporting of results, both for the students who are expected to test for accountability calculations, but also in order to view the students' results. Once you've inputted the information on the previous screen, you will view this screen. Again, obfuscated for privacy. You will need to select the destination test cycle, that is the test cycle that you are pre-identifying the student to test in, then grade and content area. Here you can see the Mass Update Assessment screen. From here, you can change the testing mode, online or paper pencil. You can copy students from MSTEP to My Access. Remember when you had to do this to remove the student from MSTEP from that content area? And you can copy students from one component of MME to another component, all done as groups of students instead of individually. I have a note about pre-identification of students for My Access. Each year, MDE receives a few incident reports where a student has completed both the M-STEP and My Access assessments in the same content area. In order for this to occur, you have a student who sat down twice to take a test in the same content area, which is not something anyone wants to see happen. One reason that this happens is that an assessment coordinator does not remove the student from M-STEP. This is not automatic. Make sure that you remove students from M-STEP who are taking My Access in that content area. Another issue can happen if you haven't finalized your pre-ID list before students are pulled into the DRC Insight portal, which this year happened on February 21st. If you have any students who are taking My Access in a content area that are still pre-ID'd to M-STEP in that content area on February 21st, then they will be pulled into the DRC Insight portal. And once a student is pulled into the DRC Insight portal, they cannot be removed. When this happens, if the student is listed in a test session, then there will be test tickets generated and printed when you print the test tickets. Once there is a printed test ticket, it is natural for the test administrator to administer the test, assuming that if a student has a test ticket, then the student should test. One way that some schools have solved this potential problem is to create a test session that is called Not Testing, or something like that, where they can put those students so that there is no test ticket printed out and therefore no reason for the test to be taken. Remember, accountability calculations are made based on MSDS enrollment data, not what's in the DRC Insight portal, so it's not an issue if you have students who are in the DRC Insight portal as not testing. If you need more information about how to use this screen, there are detailed step-by-step instructions available on the Secure Site training page. Again, www.michigan.gov/Secure Site Training. The Pre-ID Student Report is available so that you can view students who are pre-identified for testing, including by grade and content area, mode of testing, that is paper, pencil, or online, and demographic information based on what exists in MSDS. You can use this page to unassign students from an assessment if you notice any errors in your pre-ID list. Remember, unassigning a student from a test in the OEAA Secure Site does not remove the accountability to test. Accountability is based on MSDS information. Here is what the Pre-ID Student Report looks like. Each column can be filtered so that you can look at this list based on any of the listed categories. You can also see the total count pre-ID'd by content area and total according to test mode. Remember, you can unassign students from testing if you see them on this list, but they should not be. This is another opportunity to verify that your students who are taking My Access in a content area are not also pre-ID'd for M-STEP. Search by test period and then select Spring 2022. Barcode labels are required for all paper pencil answer documents. You must have a student barcode label on each answer document. If you pre-identified by February 16th, then barcode labels will be printed and shipped with your initial material order. If not, then you will have to print them from the OEAA Secure Site. To find barcode labels in the Secure Site, from this screen, you search by test cycle, ISD, district and school, and then you can filter your results by student name, UIC, grade, or test mode, paper, pencil, or online, to print barcode labels. This note pops up on your screen when you select Print Barcodes on the lower left of the search results. There are specific labels and settings that are required when you are printing your barcodes, so make sure you read this so that your barcodes are printed correctly. Initial material orders were done through the OEAA Secure Site and are based on your pre-ID counts. Additional material orders will also be done in the OEAA Secure Site. This function is available once the IMOs have arrived in schools. Dates for material delivery are listed here and in the Important Dates documents. March 28th through the 30th is the default date range, and April 4th through the 6th are the alternate dates. in case your school or district has a conflict for the default dates. Deliveries for the AMOs are based on ordered materials. This is the Initial Material Orders screen, or IMOs. You search by test cycle, and then you can select your shipping destination and your delivery dates. The first date listed is the default date, but you can change that in case there's something happening in your district or building during that week. The address listed is based on the address for the M-STEP coordinator in EEM. Make sure you verify that this is correct so that your materials are sent to the correct place. IMOs are automatically generated based on your pre-ID count. This window has closed for spring 2022, but you can view your order from this screen. You can still place material orders if you have any need for additional materials. The window for additional material orders is listed here, April 7th through May 3rd. These dates are also listed in the Important Dates documents. We are asked frequently what comes in the initial material orders, which are based on pre-ID count. So here we go. Everyone receives OEAA security compliance forms and the test administrator's directions and manual, either online and/or paper pencil, depending on their pre-ID count. The test administrator's directions and manuals are sent at a rate of 1 per 20 pre-ID'd students. Then, for schools that only have online testing in their pre-ID count, if they have 6th or 7th grade students, they will also receive 1 graph paper per student. For schools that have any student pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing, then they will receive blank labels that you can print barcodes on, if necessary, listening scripts and CDs, of course the test booklets and answer documents, and your printed pre-ID labels based on the students who were pre-ID'd to paper pencil testing on or before February 16th. Return kits are now only sent to schools that have students pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing. If you had no students pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing during the initial material order window, but subsequently ordered paper pencil materials during the additional material order window, you will be sent the return kit with your additional material order. Finally, any schools that ordered any accommodated materials will receive those according to the materials ordered. Make sure that you inventory all of your secure materials when you receive them. Use the packing slip that's included in your delivery to verify that everything on the packing slip is included in your order. If there are any secure materials that are required to be returned to the scoring contractor, such as listening scripts or CDs, accommodated versions of the test booklets, etc., that are not returned, you will be required to locate the missing materials. You cannot say at that point that you didn't receive them. You need to tell us that at the time of the delivery. If you do your inventory and there are any materials that are on your packing list that you did not receive, send us an email at mde-oeaa@michigan.gov. This is important because failure to return all secure materials may result in the district or school being placed on a future monitoring list. On our random visits to schools, management of secure materials comes up as an issue in some schools, so this slide is a reminder. All secure materials must be retained in a secure, locked location within the school. This cannot be just in a locked office, like on the principal's or the assessment coordinator's desk, because it's possible that the office can be left unattended and the materials are not secure. They need to be locked in a cabinet or drawer when not in use. Next, all secure materials must be distributed and collected each day. Secure materials for online testing are test rosters and test tickets and any used scratch or graph paper. For paper pencil testing, secure materials include test booklets, use answer documents, L1 glossaries, and any accommodated version of the test, listening CDs or scripts, reader scripts, use scratch or graph paper, and more. Make sure you review the TAM if you have any questions about what are secure materials, and look on page 63 for more information about materials and materials handling. The DRC Insight Portal is the system used to manage online test sessions assign designated supports and accommodations, to print and manage test tickets, and during testing to monitor student testing status. Access to the DRC Insight portal is granted through the OEAA Secure site based on role assignment in the OEAA Secure site. If you need help getting access to the DRC Insight portal, go to the Secure Site training page at www.michigan.gov Secure Site Training and select the document under Security called How Do I Get Access to the DRC Insight portal? The DRC Insight portal will become available for online test administration tasks beginning on March 4th. Students who were pre-ID'd and put into online test sessions in the OEAA Secure site by February 21st will be copied into the DRC Insight portal and put into test sessions. But you can still pre-ID students in the OEAA Secure site, and these students will be copied into the DRC Insight portal 3 times a day. These students who are pre-ID'd after February 21st will need to be added to test sessions in the DRC Insight portal. User access to the DRC Insight portal is required for both technology coordinators and building and district assessment coordinators. The roles to be assigned in the OEAA Secure site are listed here. They haven't changed from prior administrations. New this year is that if your test administrators are going to use the test monitoring application, they will need to have secure access. Again, if they are not using the test monitoring application, then they don't need secure access. They can access student tutorials, mini modules, and the TAMs without access. If they are using the test monitoring application, then they do need access, and they should be assigned either public or non-public online test administrator roles in the OEAA Secure site. Then they will get the email from the DRC Insight portal with information about how to access their account. Once your pre-ID is done, test sessions are set up, and you have assigned all universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations, then you can print your test tickets. A quick reminder, you have to assign universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations before test tickets are generated. If you print your test tickets and then add a support afterwards, the support won't be available when the student logs into the test. To print your test tickets, log into the DRC Insight portal, select Test Management, and then go to Manage Test Sessions. Complete the Administration, Entity Information, Grade, and Content area and select Show Sessions. This will bring back all of the test sessions according to your filtered results. You can select Test Session Test Tickets to print, or you can select Print All Tickets to print all of the test tickets for the filtered results shown. Test tickets can also be printed individually. You select the Edit Print icon shown in the first image, and then select the student or students whose test tickets you are printing, and then select Print Selected. There are mini modules, each no longer than 5 minutes, that explain in detail how to do each function in the DRC Insight portal. Once you are logged in, go to General Information, then select the Documents tab and filter on Mini Modules and select Show Documents. It is important that students are aware of how the items on the test work and the tools that are available to them before testing day. This ensures that students can focus on the content and not on the testing engine on testing day. There are student tutorials and online tools training, or OTTs, that should be used. You can launch Insight, and the tutorials are the yellow link at the bottom, and you can see the OTTs listed under each assessment logo. You can also access them from the MSTEP webpage as long as you use a Chrome browser. Go to the Parent-Student Information section and select the link Online Practice for MSTEP ELA, Math, Science, and Social Studies. The page that opens has a link to the OTTs on the top portion of the page. To prepare students for testing, MDE recommends that a teacher view the tutorials with students as a class and then model the use of the OTTs. Once students are familiar with this, Then they should have an opportunity to practice with the OTTs on the device they will use during testing. The image here shows you what the tutorials look like. They're each a short video that focuses on one thing in the test. They use a child voice, and there is closed captioning on each tutorial. Here is a reminder about the scratch paper and calculator policies. The full policies are available on the MSTEP webpage, in the Test Administration Manual, and in the Test Administrator's Directions and Manual documents. For scratch paper, it is available as a universal tool. On the mathematics test, graph paper is required for grades 6 and 7 and optional for grades 3 through 5. Don't forget that used scratch paper is a secure material. Be sure to collect after testing for secure destruction. I discussed the calculator policy at the beginning of this presentation, but again, you can find this on the MSTEP webpage in the TAM and in the Test Administrator's Directions and Manual documents. And again, there are no changes in the calculator policy for mathematics. The update was to allow the basic calculator for grade 5 science and a scientific calculator for grades 8 and 11 science. Are you signed up for the Spotlight? It's our weekly newsletter that includes all of the important information that you will need to know throughout the year. It comes out on Thursday afternoon. If you're not signed up yet, go to www.michigan.gov/MSTEP, scroll down until you see the Spotlight logo, click it, and then you can sign up there. Thank you for joining me for this first chapter of the 2022 MSTEP Administration Training. You can see our contact information here if you have any questions. Email mde-oeaa@michigan.gov or call 877-560-8378 and follow the prompts. Also, if you have ideas, suggestions, or ways that you manage your test administration tasks that you think other schools might find helpful, please send us an email. We include those in Spotlight articles, and all of the helpful hints that you see in the TAM came from tips from folks from the field. Let us know what's working for you. Make sure that you join me for Chapter 2 of this training, where we will discuss the tasks that need to be done during testing.